Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Excited to kind of see everyone again. And I'm also excited. I'm joined by Patty Ruggia from Dilawri. So very excited to have you here. Patty and I have been working together for quite some time. I think like 8 years probably. You've been in automotive recruiting for I think 8 years. And we've kind of gone through the journey somewhat, on and off together. So I'm joined by Patty. Super excited to have you here, Patty. So we're going to talk a little bit about, from her perspective, from a recruiter's perspective, what you can be doing right now. I know the pandemic has kind of got us all in a little bit of a funk. It's hard to find jobs. The unemployment numbers aren't promising, but we want to be really positive in our session today. So we're going to give a lot of advice, a lot of uplifting, things that you can do in your job search because we really want to end on a positive note. So I'm going to give you just a quick intro, Patty, so everyone knows who you are.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, we encourage you guys to ask questions. So on the right hand side, you can see a backstage an event chat or a stage chat. So we encourage you to ask as many questions as you want throughout the presentation. It helps us know you're out there. It keeps the conversation going. So we encourage you to ask questions, and then we'll kind of take them as we go along. We've got some questions pre kind of conceived, and then we'll also go through the questions that were asked as well. So Patty's a registered professional recruiter. She thrives on connecting with candidates who are either currently employed in the industry or candidates from other fields who might be looking for a change. COVID-19 has seen all roles in all industries change to some extent, but one thing is for sure: automotive, retail, sales, and service are here to stay as an essential service. I mean, absolutely, everybody has to drive a car, right? So it's a great industry to be in. Patty has developed and nurtured relationships with local employment centers, including Employment Ontario, and local and near local colleges that offer automotive focused programs. So super excited to have you here. You work for, maybe you can talk a little bit about what Dilawri does for people that don't know, because I think you're one of the larger automotive dealerships, or I don't know what you call them, group of dealerships in the GTA. So maybe you can give us just a little bit of information about your organization and maybe a little bit about your background that I didn't cover as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Rachel. Happy to be here. We were in person 2 years ago down at the convention center, and now here we are living a virtual life. So thanks again for having me.
Absolutely.
So the Dilawri Group of Companies is the largest dealer group in Canada. We've got 76 dealerships across Canada, BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Ontario, and Quebec as well, 19 of which are in Ontario. So a large employee population, as well as those 19 dealerships serving the GTA. So we've been in business since 1985. I believe the business, they did start in Saskatchewan in 1985, and the team has grown since then. And we have a very broad range of automotive brands, including a Harley-Davidson dealership in Mississauga. So a great way to brand or to diversify the brand offering. So my background does come from automotive retail and service. I was with another large automotive company up until September, and then made the transition to the Dilawri team. It's been very fast paced, of course. How often have people made a transition during a pandemic? Well, I can speak to it because, as Rachel was saying, automotive is an essential service. We're sorry to be busy and crazy when there's so many people that are struggling right now, and there's so many people that are out there looking for work. But I feel very blessed to work in an industry that is still hiring, albeit it's a little bit slower now than it was initially. But we've been pretty steady all the way through. As Rachel said, cars do need to be serviced. There are people buying cars. So while people are staying home more, there's an opportunity to make sure that your car is in optimum order. Of course, we just went through tire season, so you would not have known that we were in a pandemic other than, of course, our strict COVID-19 protocol. So super busy. One of the things I like to talk about when fleshing out Dilawri is they also have the Dilawri Foundation. For those of you who've got your phones and laptops in front of you and you can click on it while I'm talking, they like to give back to their community. So one of the things that I found when I started was, wow, there's a Dilawri Foundation. So from Shania's Kids, everybody knows who Shania Twain is, a fabulous Canadian entertainer, right through to children's pediatric sponsoring and everything like that. So I'm happy to be part of a team that, first of all, is an essential service for the Greater Toronto area, as well as Canada, and to part of an organization that gives back.
That's amazing. Sounds like I didn't realize that it was the largest automotive group in Canada.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So maybe we can talk a little bit about just some general advice as a recruiter that you would give. I know a lot of people, the recruiting world has changed. I've been in the industry for about 15 years, and I've seen it go through periods of, it went from you picked up a newspaper and you looked at a job ad. And I know automotive was very big on, print advertising. And then it switched to, the job boards. And now with the evolution of social media and virtual interviews and all of these things, it's changed again so drastically, from when you just used to apply online and then, you'd have recruiters calling you and contacting you. Now it's a struggle. You've got applying online, you've got some print, you've got social media, you've got all these people pulling you in a million different directions on how you can reach recruiters or apply for jobs. I guess what would be your, maybe 3 strategies if there's someone out there that is looking for a job today, so in this virtual world, maybe you could give them 3 strategies of what you think they should be doing from a recruiter's perspective to get more noticed.
Sure. So absolutely the social media. And Rachel and I just had trouble getting me online because I am a bit of a technical dinosaur, but even I've been brought screaming into this century with social media. We have Instagram postings, we have LinkedIn postings and Facebook postings for Dilawri recruiting. So again, the newspaper days seem to be going out the door, although that is still an option, of course. What I would want to see candidates doing is keeping abreast on a regular basis of how the roles that we have available, because the roles that we have posted at Dilawri.ca are also filtered through automatically to Indeed. That's how our fabulous HRIS system works. So those roles, once we post them internally through our HRIS system, they actually get posted to Indeed as well. We also still use the Trillium Automotive Dealers Association website called Cars and Jobs. So that's another avenue, but definitely tech savvy, definitely staying abreast with social media. And one of the things that I like to tell candidates, especially at a time like this, we have our pre-COVID world, and of course we have our COVID world, which doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. There's one thing that you can do. So for instance, if you're looking at a company's website like Dilawri, or hopefully you're looking at Dilawri's website, you will see a role posted, and then you might connect with me or submit a resume, and I may respond to you and say a candidate's been identified. But I will often encourage candidates, especially if it's a resume that I've liked, or and we can talk about resumes if anybody has any questions, or if they've maybe found something else and we've made a connection. I will encourage people to keep abreast of the roles that we have. A role that's posted tomorrow and filled the next day may be posted again in 2 or 3 months, or maybe posted again in 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't want to discourage people from saying, oh, well, the role is filled. Again, we are a busy essential service. And of course, because of the second pandemic restrictions, we're not as hiring as frequently as we normally would be. But at the end of the day, there's roles being posted. I am still here. We're still looking to recruit candidates. And even if a resume comes in from a technician or maybe a sales manager or maybe even a receptionist that I see as some viable complementary experience for a role, I will still reach out to you and build that connection. So don't be afraid to build connections. I think that was just 2.
That's okay. So going along with that, I'll do the 3rd now. So
Lovely.
What kind of intrigues you about a candidate? So if someone is submitting their resume online, obviously you might get hundreds of applications.
Yes.
So what's something that really, you look at a resume and you say, wow, I'm intrigued by this? Because I think the stat is, I know there's lots of different stats, but it's like 8 seconds or something you have to captivate a recruiter's attention on your resume. So what intrigues you about a resume, or how does your organization look at the resumes and say, wow, this is a standout candidate?
Good. Well, again, my job has been made much easier by our HRIS system. So what happens is the resumes come in and they apply for a specific role. So let's say it's for a 310S technician role. So the first thing I'm going to look for, of course, is the relevant experience. And sometimes people have a habit of putting education and hobbies and general interests on the first page. Don't do that. I don't mind a bit of an objective and some brief educational information, but if I have, like Rachel said, 45, 50 resumes for one role, which is often the case, I'm immediately looking for complementary experience for the role that's recruiting for. For instance, about a month and a half ago, we were looking for a junior graphic designer. So that's really the only time when I appreciate super creative and colorful resumes, because I can see they know what they're doing from a technical standpoint. So I'm going to be looking for that, but I'm also going to be looking for simplicity. I need to know when you started, when you stopped working there. It doesn't have to be specific dates, but flesh out those dates. I'm still seeing a lot of resumes come in that say 2020 to 2020 or 2017 to 2019, or there's no dates whatsoever on them. I like to get an idea to kind of build out a tenure for you. And it's okay if there's a gap, and it's okay if you were at a place for a shorter amount of time, because that is a conversation that you and I can have. But simplicity and neatness is better. And I know I shouldn't probably say this, but I'm not super fussy about spelling errors. On the other hand, if you spell Dilawri wrong, that's a different thing. An and or a but doesn't really bother me too much in this, this quick, fast-paced world, but I'm really looking for simplicity and basically the relevant experience. In addition, if somebody's applying for a sales role and they don't necessarily have any automotive sales experience, for an example, I would be looking for retail experience or maybe hospitality experience, because I know the hospitality community has been hit so hard by the COVID pandemic. And those are personalities that you're no longer seeing at front desks anymore or on reservations lines, but they could complement a sales role quite nice. And what I don't see oftentimes is somebody who wants to get into automotive sales. They have not done the research and realized or found out that an OMBIC license is required to sell cars in Ontario. So if I have 5 resumes for a sales consultant and none of them have automotive sales experience and 3 of them have an OMBIC license, it shows me that they've invested the time and the money to taking that next step into their career. So those are the 3 resumes or candidates that I will be reaching out to.
Okay, perfect. So we have some questions coming in. So we have 2 questions kind of related to internships. So do you hire part-time students or interns? I guess we've had 2 people ask that now. So
an internship or a co-op situations would be looked at on an individual basis. Again, I've only been with the company for such a short time, and it has been during COVID. So that would be something that we would need to revisit. What I would want a candidate or a student to know is that don't be afraid to reach out and ask for one, because even if there's nothing happening now with COVID, what I would do is if somebody were to email me or reach out to me through HR4 by submitting a resume, what I would do is say, oh, you're interested in a co-op role and you maybe potentially want to work here. What I will do is say, okay, well, let's connect again in 2 or 3 months or in a month or so, depending on what's happening with the pandemic. And when I say that to a candidate, it's usually somebody that I've maybe chatted with on the phone and connected with and said, hey, let's, we've built a bit of a relationship, and I will literally physically cut and paste their name and number in my calendar. And it might be for a month and a half from now or 2 months from now, because everything that's going on between now and then, it won't let me remember. But if I put it in my calendar and 2 months goes by and I see that person's name popping up, things may have entirely changed at the company in terms of the pandemic, and we might again be able to consider something like that. Traditionally, there is not an initial internship program, but we're looking forward to hopefully implementing something like that, as we do have relationships with the local schools.
Okay, that's amazing. Great. That's great to know. So someone's asking, how has your marketing department been affected by COVID's impact on the economy?
Well, again, they still have regular meetings about social media, so they're still advertising. I can't speak to the details of the marketing department, but I do know that they're still there. As always, marketing teams are working meticulously behind the scenes. They help me out on an often basis if I have a role, and I can only speak to it from an HR perspective. If I have a role that needs to be posted, I often send them a graphic and ask them to create something for me that's eye-catching for our social media website. We use Hootsuite to do 3 postings at once, which again, for an old dinosaur like me, I really enjoy having the simplicity of that tool. But yeah, they're busy working behind the scenes, still very, very busy, but I can't speak to how they've been impacted otherwise.
Amazing. So now I guess we've talked a little bit about what you look for on resumes.
Mhm.
If someone makes it to the interview stage,
Okay.
I'm assuming that you're doing virtual interviews at the moment. So
Yes.
what are some maybe some things that people can do to prepare for a virtual interview? I mean, what is it? And I guess it's a two-part question. So what can people do to prepare themselves? Like what should they be doing for virtual interviews? And then what do you look for? What impresses you when you conduct a virtual interview with someone in terms of
Good.
a candidate? What impresses you from their virtual interview?
Good. So I'm so glad you asked this, because I've had, since the onset, especially of the second wave of the pandemic, we have gone to mostly virtual, not everything for second and third interviews. They may have to still come in, but from an HR standpoint, absolutely. I host virtual interviews all the time. What I like to see is people that are early, because I've got my, like we were today, set up. I can see when somebody's in and waiting. So I like to see the same as you would a face-to-face interview, show up early. Another thing is that our backgrounds, mine is a little bit off-sided with my Dilawri poster, but you've made sure that your cat isn't hanging off the wall, right, Rachel, or behind you or anything like that. This Zoom interview is technically a face-to-face interview. We just happen to be doing it virtually. So I've seen people, my goodness, they haven't dressed in a polished manner for an interview. Something that they would normally wear for an interview face-to-face, they wouldn't normally, they're still wearing sweats. I've seen pajama bottoms, yes. I've seen people conduct Zoom interviews for me for reception roles on their beds in their bedrooms that haven't been made. And again, sometimes people may not have the room, but I'd rather see you standing at your dresser than to see your Hello Kitty pillowcase. Don't get me wrong, I love Hello Kitty, but let's be mindful is that when you're participating in a Zoom interview, that is still essentially a face-to-face interview. It just happens to be virtual. And I could go on, believe me. And another thing is that if you are not able, Rachel, if you and I had an appointment for tomorrow at 4:00 and you realized early on in the day that you weren't going to be able to make it, would you just be a no-show on the virtual, or what would you do?
Oh, absolutely not. You can't do that for anything in life. Meetings,
right.
Even if I'm doing a Zoom thing with my family and I'm 2 minutes late, I'm in trouble. So
exactly. So you would let me know. You might pick up the phone. You might email me and say, "Hey, Patty, I'm running a little bit late, or can we reschedule for tomorrow?" So I've seen more Zoom interviews than I'd like, because what happens with our process is that a person applies, I review the candidates, I will reach out to them mostly for virtual interviews, not always. If it's a role that is like a car washer or a detailer or something like that, we don't always necessarily have face-to-face interviews, but I will book the interview with the candidate virtually or in person. Again, very, very, there's very rare in-person interviews right now, but they will be no-shows. So they will not show up. And if somebody not showing up for a Zoom video interview is the same for me as somebody not showing for an in-person video. And I'll even give you the benefit of the doubt and say, well, were you able to let the manager know? And they'll say, oh, I didn't. And I just need to know that if you're going to show up, if we make an offer for a job, if you're late for work, and it happens to everybody, that you're going to let your manager know. So that's a good indication. Is Zoom no-shows, I take them as seriously as a person-to-person no-show, because we've taken the time to set aside to meet with you, whether it's myself or my manager.
Absolutely. And just to add, to that, where I lost my train of thought just there.
Okay.
Just to add to that, I have a couple things like from our perspective. When I was interviewing a candidate and they were kind of looking like, I don't know if they had another screen that was happening. So I learned a cool tip that I put a pink sticky note now by my camera, because if you're looking down, or if you're looking at yourself, or if you're looking at another screen, you're not engaged. Like, so I'm looking at the camera when I'm speaking.
That's right.
And to do that, I have a pink sticky note, because I always forget I want to look at you, but I should be looking, because you're going to want to also try during your virtual interview to make eye contact, right?
That's right.
So, and that's really important. But the point I was going to make about you're talking about people missing interviews. Your industry and a lot of industries are smaller than they seem. So, I mean, you've come from a previous automotive company. Now you're with Dilawri. So you do not want to ruin your reputation with any recruiter ever. So, I mean, if you don't show up, those names probably stick in your mind, right? Like, oh,
Yes, they do.
that person didn't show up for their interview, and now you're working for another company, and that, as a job seeker, it limits your chance of your reputation, moving forward. Because a lot of recruiters stay within the industry and move around in different companies, and it's memorable when someone doesn't show up or they ghost you. So, for your own kind of professional nature and keeping your good rapport with recruiters, it's super important. Like you're saying, a phone call, an email, it's super easy, and it saves your your reputation ultimately.
That's right.
Recruiters put notes sometimes in people's profiles, and if you ever want to apply for that company, if you ever want to apply for that company again, so we have another question. How you visually present on, or how you present, I guess she's just making a point. How you visually present on an interview is crucial. First impressions are critical. So, I guess we could probably speak to that. First impressions are, and they're made so quickly. First impressions are made within 3 seconds, I think.
That's
like
right.
Very, and as recruiters, we try not to, you're trying not to be judgmental in the first 3 seconds. People are nervous. People, it takes a little while, especially to get used to virtual. It's taken me a long time to get, situated and make sure my delivery is okay. But yeah, first impressions are critical. But as a recruiter, and I'm sure you can speak to this, I try not to be too judgmental in the first little bit, because like I said, it's, it's a new experience. People are just kind of getting used to it. They might be nervous. So that's, but that's a great point, Claudia.
I would like, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd like to speak to that, Rachel, because just yesterday or the day before, I was on LinkedIn, and somebody had, another recruiter that I connected with did a posting saying, I had a beautiful dream. And she went on to say how when she went in for an interview, the receptionist greeted her and happened to know that she was there for an interview. And then she was offered a cappuccino. And then when both people came into the boardroom, this was in the shaking hand days, they shook her hand and thanked her for her patience and sat down with her and went through the interview. Nobody picked up a phone during the interview. And then when she left, they shook her hand and thank you for your patience, and somebody will be back in contact to follow up. And she said, then I woke up and realized that that's not the way it is for candidates these days. And it really struck me because she put a note on at the end of the posting saying, make interviewing human again. I personally don't know any other way to interview people, and why. I've heard some horror stories from candidates, and they've often said to me, well, he made me feel so comfortable. Well, why would I want to make somebody who wants to work for our company feel uncomfortable, especially if they're serving our customers? So Dilawri, I know all of the core values, but one of the most important ones, of course, is being customer focused. But that's not just with our external customers that are having our cars bought and serviced, but they're for our external customers. Like, for instance, Rachel, you're my customer right now. I'm hoping that there's at least some people out there still listening to us, but those people are my customers as well. So when a candidate entrusts me with their personal information on a resume, those people become my customers from start to finish. So we treat them like customers. So I just wanted to speak a bit about that. Is I am not fussy when somebody's nervous for the first little bit. And I think it's important for recruiters to spend a few minutes talking about a lot. Of course, we have focus now, it's COVID. How are you holding up during this pandemic? I hope your family and friends are safe. There's a way that you can really break the ice and kind of get people, comfortable, especially online. I don't like being on video. It's horrifying for me, but there's lots of people that feel the same way. And I think taking that first 10 or 15 minutes to make people feel comfortable before you get into the meat and potatoes of the interview is okay and should be a norm.
Absolutely. I definitely, I've done a lot of interviewing in my days, and I am the same way. I put myself in the candidate's shoes, and I want to be asked those personal questions. I want those, icebreakers to help me kind of, because anyone's nervous, right? In the beginning of anything, regardless of how many times you've done it. So it's amazing. And I know how amazing and personable you are, and how comfortable you make candidates feel, because you've been at all of our events, and I get a lot of compliments on you. So it speaks a lot of volume. Yeah, so we have a couple more questions. So this
Okay.
is great. So Pavneet's asked, what research should be done for the company before the video interview? So it's a great question.
Oh, it is a great question. I love hearing from people. And so if I'm Zooming them or if I'm talking to you on the phone, one of the questions I will always ask is, what have you found out about Dilawri? Or have you ever applied to Dilawri before? And
We asked the same.
not enough, but a lot of people, I wish they all would. Some people will just say, well, not very much actually, or I don't know anything, or but the ones that stand out that tell me that we have 76 dealerships across Canada and 19 in Ontario, that's enough for me that you may have seen the role on Indeed and dug a little bit deeper. So that's, yeah, I don't need to know, you don't need to tell me all the general managers' names throughout all of our dealerships, but I do like to hear that you've done a little bit of research on Dilawri.
Right. And it takes 1 minute to do a quick Google search on the company name. That's doing your due diligence. Just jot down a couple good notes about, the company. I know, Sue, you also, said that as a suggestion here in the chat, which we appreciate. So yeah, jotting down just a couple quick questions to ask to ask the company. When someone says to me, like, how long have you worked for TorontoJobs.ca, or what's your experience been like? It gives me an opportunity to open up to you, which helps our connection. Like, we're making a connection here. And if you're interested in my journey, just as much as I'm interested in your journey, we're making a really good connection. So,
exactly.
I don't know if you're, if I've had job seekers or people that I've been interviewing have really asked me a lot of really great about my culture, about, what it's like to work here, why I've worked here for as long as I have. I mean, I've been with Toronto Jobs for a really long time. And like I said, it brings that personal connection, and doing some research about the person that's interviewing you. So doing some research about Patty, like where she comes from, how long she's been in recruiting. And then you can say, hey, I saw your LinkedIn profile. I see you've been in the automotive industry for such and such a years. Like, what do you love about it? Like, how impressive is that they did a little bit of research on you, and they really want to know why you love the industry. So that was a great question. But yeah, I mean, as much as you can do, have questions prepared, have some some information about the company for sure. Is even if you just jot down, like you said, that there's 76 dealerships, just knowing that shows that you did the research. So we have a few minutes left, and I do want to talk, because I'm sure everyone's here is looking for a job, and they probably want to know, how can I work for this amazing organization, and how can I work with Patty? So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the roles that you have open. And then is there a direct, maybe I'll try to find your direct careers link so I can.
Sure.
I put your website in here, but let me see if I can find your careers link. But maybe you just want to talk a little bit about your roles.
Absolutely. Well, I am sorry to say that it certainly is quieter now. Right now, I'm looking for a part-time wash attendant for our Agent Cart Mazda store, looking for a detailer for Audi Barrie, and I'm looking for a couple of roles for our collision center. So, most people think, when they think about Dilawri, they think about all these fabulous cars. And yes, we have those, but as you all know, we do get into collisions sometimes. And Dilawri has 3 collision centers in Ontario. One is in Agent Court Mazda, Oakville Honda, as well as a satellite, kind of a one-man show over at 401 in Dixie. So collision repair is definitely a viable career option. It's niche experience, so it's somebody who's writing estimates and things like that. And we're looking for generally just those roles for the time being. But what I do want to note is that automotive accounting, we're looking for a deal clerk right now for Oakville Honda. So somebody that's had previous deal posting experience. For those of you in the accounting field, if we get a resume in from somebody, even if it's minimal automotive accounting experience, I'm going to be on the phone that same day, because those resumes are really hard to come by. So essentially, it's a deal clerk, it's a detailer, and a part-time wash attendant. We also have a wash attendant full-time role at Oakville Honda as well. And then, of course, some of those collision roles. The ones for the wash attendant and the detailer and the deal clerk, those are looking to hire a little bit more imminently than the collision repair. We just have identified some viable candidates. But again, here's another example, Rachel. If I had got a resume from a body technician in tomorrow, even if we're not officially looking for a body technician right now, I'm going to be on the phone with that person, building a relationship, saying, hey, we may not be looking right now, but let's you and I talk again in a couple of weeks. And what will I do? I will take that person's name and put it in my calendar and reach out. I like to have people in my pocket, so to speak. I was able to produce sales candidates that way, because sometimes we get a lot of resumes in for sales candidates, and if they're looking right away, or if they're not looking right away, I'm still going to see a good resume that has some good experience on it and able to reach out and then book them within a couple of hours. Our Dixie Mitsubishi and Dixie Nissan dealerships are also looking for sales consultants right now. And if you recall, they will be looking for that OMVIC license. Right away. So again, there's no imminent hiring like we need someone tomorrow at the end of the day. But what I want to do is encourage people to reach out to me. If Rachel, if you want to post my email, I'm totally fine with that. If somebody wants to reach out, and because often as at physical job fairs, I'll tell 100 people that, and only 2 or 3 people will actually do it and reach out to me and keep in touch with me from time to time.
The same thing happens to me, and I'm always mind boggled by that.
Use us. That's what I say to candidates, use us. And do we have time for a little success story for Toronto Jobs?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, I think it was October 2018 or October 2019 when we did the Roy Thompson Hall function. Do you remember? That was the big one. That was the big one. We had lineups of
4,000 people there, I think, or something like that.
We had 4 lines going. Thank goodness I had brought 3 people with me. So we met a man by the name of Yasser, and he was kind of my rock star of the day. Why? People want to know why? Because he was wearing a suit to a job fair. He was very articulate. He had hospitality experience, but he had, was looking for something new. And I said, Yasser, you should be selling cars. And we talked, and he goes, yeah, I don't know. And I talked to him a little bit about the OMVIC process. And I said, your personality, he's been at the front desk at the Four Seasons or the Marriott for the last 5 years. I said, you know how to take care of people. You know how to build those relationships. Well, we kept in touch. He was one of the resumes that I kept in touch, and I put him in my Outlook and connected with him every once in a while. And he said hello. And then this was when I was with my old company. His name came up again. And of course, because I recognized his name, we had taken the time to nurture a relationship. I recognized his name right away. I didn't even have to screen him. I sent the resume to the manager and I said, I met this guy at a job fair 1.5 years ago. His name is Yasser. I think he would have a lot of potential. And now he's working at one of the dealerships for my former company, knocking it out of the park. And as much as I was sad, to leave him, I would never poach somebody else's people, but I'm happy to see that that's one of my passions, is making connections for people and seeing people do well in those roles. So I'm living proof that Toronto Jobs is a great organization to be able to meet people.
Oh, thank you.
So that's my success story, and his name's.
Well, that was our goal. So, we were able to do that so many times live, and now that we've switched to virtual, it's been a different experience. But we're trying to. A lot of people are still hesitant about the whole virtual thing and networking and connecting, but for the last 9 months, we've really been trying to build. We do close to 30 online events over the course of 3 months. So quite a number of different events. We have some coming up. We have you'll find I'll put the link in the chat for all of our upcoming events so that everyone can be aware of them. We have some tech focused ones. We have some general hiring events. So if you go to TorontoJobs.ca/news, you'll be able to find those. But I just wanted to, I know we're a little bit over time. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing that story and all your advice. I mean, you've been in the recruiting industry for a very long time, so it's very much appreciated. And thank you for being here and sharing your story. And thanks to everyone for participating today. I know, the pandemic's kind of put a wrench in all of our plans and our job search, but we have to really being positive every day, being in a positive mindset. I said at the beginning, have some goals that you write down every day. So at least you're working towards something, whether it's, looking at reviewing your resume, recording a video interview, and then watching it back to see how you can improve on video. Yeah. Set down 3 to 5 goals every day, reaching out to 2 new recruiters, trying to make connections.
That's right.
There's so many goals you can create for yourself, and it will help you in that positive mindset and keep on track and feel accomplished. So yes, I would love to end on a positive note. Thank you, Debbie, for your everyone saying awesome story. They love the ending. I love to end on a positive note. So if anyone wants to reach out to me or to Patty, I've put Patty's email address in there.
Lovely.
I'm on LinkedIn, Rachel Mitchell, Patty's on LinkedIn. So yes, definitely, stay positive. We have a lot of events, a lot of different speakers and things like that to try to help people in their search. And hopefully you had a great experience today. And thanks again, Patty, for your time. And thanks to all of our
welcome. Thank you so
thanks
much.
so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone, and hope to see you soon. Thanks.